Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. New satellite data analysis using 8 satellite images by scientists from the UK Centre for Polar Observation and Modelling at the University of Leeds in the UK has revealed that Arctic cap is rapidly melting at an unprecedented rate. Further, the World Meteorological Organization brought together the findings of 3 major climate research units: the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and the UK's Met Office, all of which says that 2014 was the hottest year on record. Last week, President Obama also announced that his Department of Interior would push for the largest protected wildlife refuge, consisting of 12.28 million acres, since Congress passed the first Wilderness Act 50 years ago. Let's take a look at what President Obama had to say.
My Department of Interior has put forward a comprehensive plan to make sure that we're protecting the refuge and that we're designating new areas, including coastal plains, for preservation. And I'm going to be calling on Congress to make sure that they take it one step further, designating it as a wilderness so that we can make sure that this amazing wonder is preserved for future generations.
2 days after this PR video from the White House announcing the protection of Bristol Bay and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, on January 27th, President Obama's administration further announced that it would be designating 9.8 million acres in the waters of Beaufort and Chukchi Seas of Alaska's coast as off-limits to consideration for future oil and gas leasing. Sounds good thus far? Here's the caveat. 2 days after that, Shell announced it would revive its Arctic drilling program that has been suspended since 2012. In critiquing President Obama's statement, our next 2 guests says that as always, devil is in the detail and that Obama's announcement is not all what it's cut out to be. Joining us from Port Townsend, Washington, is Subhankar Banerjee. Subhankar is an environmental and humanities scholar and activist. He founded climatestorytellers.org, and he's the editor of the anthology Arctic Voices: Resistance at the Tipping Point. And we're also joined by Leah Donahey. She is the senior campaign director for the Alaska Wilderness League's Arctic Oceans campaign to protect the ocean from oil and gas development. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So, Subhankar, let me start with you. You said that President Obama's announcement last week about the preserving the Alaskan wilderness, where it is all the devil's in the detail, you said. What did you mean by that?
Okay, so after kind of pursuing a rather aggressive pro-drilling policy about the Arctic Ocean, the president is finally showing signs of conservation sentiment. So this is only to be welcome. But as you said, devil is in the detail, and we need to look at it a little bit carefully. So the White House announcement says that the president protects marine wilderness. What he has done is 9.8 million acres, including the biologically significant Hannah Shoal, is to be kept off limits from future oil and gas leases. But the current leases does not apply. So let me just give you a little bit of background about how the president came to this decision. What is Hannah Shoal and what does it mean with regard to Shell's Arctic drilling? In 2012, in August 2012, the very month that the president had approved Shell to go drill in the Beaufort and Chukchi Seas, that same month, he also sent a team of scientists to study Hannah Shoal. Hannah Shoal had been studied before sporadically, but this was the first comprehensive study of Hannah Shoal, which is, by the way, in the Chukchi Sea. So anyway, the scientists went up there. They did their what called the baseline, or they're now calling it benchmark studies, in 2012 and 2013. And what they found is that Hannah Shoal could be considered like what you would call a biological heart, or one of the biological hearts of the Chukchi Sea. Its productivity, biological productivity, is astounding. whales and walruses and numerous other species feed there. It's truly a national ecological treasure. That combined with the fact, and that those studies were done in 2012, 2013, that combined with the fact that the walrus population in the Chukchi Sea is really struggling because of climate change. 6 out of the last 8 years, the walruses have suffered what is called this haul out, where tens of thousands of walruses come ashore, crush each other, kill their calves sometimes, and 35,000 walruses came ashore last year. And this has happened 6 out of the last 8 years. Those two facts clearly, and all of the things that the environmental community and the traditional Inupiat community have been saying, led the president to make this decision. So that's good. Now the problem is that if you look at the Hannah Shoal walrus area habitat, which the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management actually published a map last year, it overlaps with some of the oil and gas lease blocks that already the oil companies hold, including Shell, particularly in the northeastern section. More importantly, in 2012, when the scientific team went up there, the senior scientist, one of the senior scientists from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, was on the team, made a comment that anything that gets released into the water from drill sites will likely end up in Hannah Shoal. So the problem is that if the president wants to really protect Hannah Shoal, at the same time, he cannot allow Shell to go drill in the current lease blocks that they are holding in the Chukchi Sea. It would be not only a contradiction, but also what I would call a betrayal. And Leah can tell you more about the lease sale legal battle that's been going on for several years. But I will just say one last thing, that if the American public truly knew about the ecological richness of America's Arctic seas, the Beaufort and Chukchi seas, they will not allow any drilling in those waters.
Leah, let's go to you on that. You have worked on conservation policy and you've been very involved in the legal battle against Shell drilling in the Arctic. So bring us up to date on what's really going on there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I wanted to start off by saying that what President Obama did last week was such an important step for America's Arctic, not just offshore, but also onshore. He gave the first step to really seeing protection of the coastal plain in the Arctic refuge, a battle that most people in the environmental community and locals have been fighting for over 3 decades now. So he took a very important role by protecting areas, and withdrawing areas from leasing is a very important first place to do this. And while it's for future leasing, we hope it'll be a sign for where the Obama administration is going to go to protect areas offshore, not just be in favor of drilling offshore. So as Subhankar had mentioned, for the last decade, folks in the environmental community and several government tribal organizations in Alaska have been fighting a lease sale known as Lease Sale 193 in the Chukchi Sea. These were leases that were sold under the Bush administration, and they've been contested and litigated twice. They went up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the U.S. and the latest round, which there was a decision in January of last year, the court deemed the lease sale illegal and required the government to do a new reanalysis of that lease sale. Shell is only trying to drill in the Chukchi Sea in 2015. Last year, they submitted exploration plans that is focused in the Chukchi Sea, very close to the areas that Subhankar was talking about in Hannah Shoal. We think that Shell's plans, and when I say we, I mean Alaska Wilderness League, feels those plans are quite aggressive and based on what we saw in 2012 when Shell tried to drill. We do not think that the administration should be allowing Shell to go up there this year. Currently, Lease Sale 193, they had a public comment period and released an updated supplemental environmental impact statement. That supplemental found that if the leases were developed, there's a 75% chance that a large oil spill could take place in that area. So while these protections are a really important first step, if the government does authorize Shell to drill at the same time, we could see quite, there are no boundaries for oil spills. So we could see some pretty horrific effects if a spill were to happen in this area.
So these conflicting plans that the administration seems to have, on one hand, allow Exxon and other drilling companies to go up there, and then on the other hand, trying to portray that they want to protect that area. What does all of this mean, these contradictory points of view? Leah, let me go to you.
I would say the administration has had a policy known as their all of the above policy. They've been in favor of drilling offshore really since the beginning of the administration. They've upheld the Bush administration decisions and even authorized drilling and held future lease sales on their own. I would say that the protection is based on many years of science, many years of hearing from local communities. In fact, last year, the administration received 21 resolutions from tribes across the state of Alaska asking for these withdrawals to move forward. So there's a lot of local support. And I think, while the past has seen a push for drilling, we're hoping that the moves that the president made last week by making a bold move for the first time to really protect areas in the Arctic Ocean will be a new trend. They have not approved Shell's plans yet. They have not reaffirmed Lease Sale 193. Those decisions are coming in the next several months, and we hope that trend continues.
And Subhankar, what's your take on these contradictory messages coming out of the administration?
As you mentioned, I'm the editor of the book Arctic Voices: Resistance at the Tipping Point. So we have been really talking about resistance to industrial destruction of these incredibly rich ecological and cultural habitats in the Arctic, both on land and offshore. And as Leah mentioned, it is this collaboration that's happening between the environmental organizations, the tribal organizations and governments, as well as the tremendous amount of scientific work that is going on, that is finally, as I said, that President's decision is only to be welcomed, that the President is finally taking a slightly different stand on this. And the contradiction is that, let me broaden that topic up slightly, that this contradiction really needs to be challenged, or hopefully the President will take a different decision with regard to Shell's drilling. Because last month, I'll mention two very significant documents. Both came out, one came out last month and one late last year. One is Nature published a study, and in the very first paragraph, the authors mentioned that if we are to keep the global temperature below 2 degrees centigrade, beyond the industrial level, the rise, that all of the nation states have agreed to, then we must keep all Arctic resources underground, period. They unequivocally they say that all Arctic resources must remain underground. So that's one point. Second point is that the US National Academy of Sciences published a major report last year called Responding to Oil Spill in US Arctic Marine Environment. And the book opens with, the summary opens with basically two lines. One talks about that the Arctic is the integrator of the planet's biological, physical, oceanic, and atmospheric processes, meaning that anything that happens in the Arctic will affect the whole planet, not just the Arctic. Second point they make in that very report, right at the beginning, is that any spill that happens in the Chukchi Sea or the Beaufort Sea, this year Shell is only planning to drill in the Chukchi Sea, will actually become a problem for not only the United States, but other neighboring countries, all of the Arctic nation countries, primarily Russia and Canada, but it'll probably go all over the Arctic. So with all this enormous good scientific knowledge that is coming in, as well as the traditional knowledge that the Inupiat people have had for a long time, it's time for the president to really put what I would call a final cap on shale's drilling ambition. Because, we talk about capping a well that is gushing oil after a blowout, as in Deepwater Horizon. I'm actually saying that we must permanently cap shale's gushing desire to drill in the Arctic Ocean.
Right. Subhankar, Leah, can you both join me for a second segment where we can take this up? This sudden interest in the Arctic is one that we need to unravel.
Okay.
I'd be happy to, yeah.
Okay, thank you both very much for joining us on this segment, and please join us for the second segment.